If a girl is sexually interested, she will always do this. There's a moment when a girl stops flirting for attention and starts flirting because she's sexually interested. Most guys can feel that something changed, but they can't always explain what it is. It isn't just the way she looks at you. It's the kind of questions she asks, the subjects she brings up, and the private situations she starts imagining out loud. In this video, you'll learn the signs that are actually sexual, not just friendly or romantic. And the final one is the clearest, because it turns desire into something specific. 1. She asks what you're like when you're turned on. Have you ever had a woman ask something that sounds casual, but is clearly about your sexual energy? She might say, "So what are you like when you really want someone?" Or, "Are you intense?" Or, "Are you calm?" That isn't general flirting. That's sexual screening. She's not asking what music you like or where you grew up. She's trying to picture your energy when the polite version of you drops. The important part is that she's asking about arousal, control, and how desire changes you. In sexual psychology, this is called anticipatory framing. Someone explores the emotional shape of an experience before stepping into it. If she's asking how you behave when you're turned on, she's already imagining a situation where that answer matters to her personally. 2. She talks about kissing in a detailed way. Does she bring up kissing like it's a real topic, not a throwaway joke? A woman who's sexually interested may ask whether you're a good kisser, whether you like slow kissing, whether kissing matters to you, or whether a bad kiss can ruin attraction. This is not innocent conversation. Kissing is the bridge between flirting and physical intimacy, and when she brings it up with detail, she's testing the first sexual step without taking it yet. She may describe what she hates, what she likes, or what makes a kiss feel intense. That detail matters. She's not discussing kissing as a concept. She's giving you a preview of the kind of physical chemistry she wants, and checking whether you understand the pace, pressure, and confidence she'd respond to. 3. She makes jokes about you being trouble. Ever hear her say, "You look like trouble," or "I shouldn't be around you too long"? That line is sexual when the tone is charged. She's not warning herself away from your personality. She's creating a fantasy where being near you feels risky in a way she secretly likes. The phrase gives her plausible deniability, but the meaning is obvious. She's imagining losing composure around you. This is a classic tension-building move because it frames desire as something dangerous but tempting. She gets to say, "I shouldn't," while still staying in the conversation. When a woman keeps describing you as trouble, dangerous, distracting, or bad for her discipline, she's often telling you that part of her is already negotiating with the idea of giving in. If you're actually following this, comment, signal. Let's see who can tell when the conversation stops being friendly and starts becoming sexual. 4. She asks if you're dominant, gentle, or rough. Has she ever asked what kind of sexual energy you have in bed? That's one of the clearest signs because it's not social attraction anymore. It's preference matching. She may ask if you're more dominant or more gentle, whether you like control, whether you're slow or aggressive, or whether you're confident physically. The exact words can vary, but the subject is obvious. She's trying to understand how your desire would feel against hers. Sexual compatibility isn't only about attraction. It's about rhythm, boundaries, pressure, and trust. If she asks this while smiling, holding the pause, or letting the question sit between you, she's not just being curious. She's opening a sexual category and seeing whether you can enter it without becoming immature. 5. She tells you what turns her on. Does she volunteer the things that sexually affect her? A woman who's only being friendly doesn't usually hand you a map of her desire. But a woman who's sexually interested may mention voices, hands, confidence, neck kisses, slow buildup, eye contact during kissing, or being pulled closer. The specifics are the point. She's not just saying, "I like attractive men." She's naming triggers. In desire research, arousal is often cue-based, meaning certain behaviors, tones, and contexts activate the body before any direct sexual contact happens. When she tells you what turns her on, she's not simply sharing information. She's giving you language that could be used with her. She's showing you where the door is, then watching whether you're confident and respectful enough to notice. 6. She brings up being sexually frustrated. Ever had her mention that it's been a while, that she misses physical affection, or that she's tired of boring chemistry? That is not normal small talk. It's a disclosure of unmet sexual energy. She may keep it playful, but the subject is direct. Desire exists, and it isn't being satisfied. This sign becomes stronger when she says it to you privately, not in a group, and then waits for your reaction. She wants to know whether you'll panic, make a crude joke, or respond with calm confidence. Sexual frustration is vulnerable because it reveals appetite. If she lets you see that side of her, She's often testing whether you can hold the information without treating her like she's suddenly available to be pressured. 7. She asks about your sexual boundaries. Does she ask what you're into, what you'd never do, or what feels too much for you? That's a very sexual form of interest, because she's not just imagining attraction. She's imagining negotiation. A woman who's seriously interested in sexual chemistry wants to know where the edges are. She may ask about turn-ons, limits, pacing, exclusivity, casual sex, or whether you need emotional connection first. Those questions are about compatibility, consent, and comfort. They're also a sign that she's placing you inside a possible sexual future and checking whether it would feel safe. A woman who asks about boundaries isn't killing desire. She's making desire more realistic. She's asking whether the fantasy could actually survive contact with the real person. 8. She sends sexual memes or suggestive posts. Have you ever had her send you something that's clearly not innocent, then act like it's just funny? Sexual memes, dirty jokes, suggestive reels, bedroom-related screenshots, or posts about sexual tension are often used as low-risk invitations. She gets to put sexual content into the conversation without having to say, "I want to talk about this with you." The meme is the disguise. The choice to send it to you is the signal. Watch what happens after. If she follows it with a laughing emoji and disappears, it may just be humor. But if she waits, expands the topic, asks what you think, or sends another one later, she's using comedy to sexualize the connection. She's making the conversation easier to escalate without making herself too exposed. 9. She asks what you'd do if you were alone together. Does she ever frame a scenario with just the two of you and ask how you'd behave? That's not subtle. She might say, "What would you do if I came over?" Or, "Be honest, would you behave yourself?" These questions are sexually loaded because they place you both in privacy and invite you to describe restraint, desire, or escalation. The phrase, "Would you behave?" is especially revealing because it allows her to imply misbehavior while pretending to police it. She wants the tension, but she also wants to see your control. The best response isn't graphic or desperate. It's confident, measured, and consent-aware. If she keeps building alone-together hypotheticals, she's not just imagining time with you, she's imagining temptation with you. 10. She talks about what she sleeps in. Ever had her mention her pajamas, lingerie, oversized shirt, or sleeping with very little on? That's a sexual signal when it arrives without a practical reason. She's putting an intimate image into your mind and watching whether you can handle it. Clothing at bedtime carries a private frame association because it belongs to the bedroom, not the public version of her. When she says, "I usually sleep in a big shirt," or "I hate sleeping in too many clothes," she's not necessarily inviting you over, but she is making you imagine her in a more intimate setting. That matters. Sexual interest often escalates through mental images before physical escalation happens. If she volunteers bedroom clothing details and keeps the conversation there, she's making the private version of herself visible to you. 11. She describes how her body reacts to chemistry. Does she tell you what happens when she's attracted to someone physically? She may say she gets flustered, can't think straight, feels warm, gets goosebumps, becomes sensitive to touch, or has trouble focusing. This is much more sexual than saying, "I like confident men." She's talking about arousal as a bodily experience. The body has measurable responses to desire, changes in breathing, skin sensitivity, heart rate, and attention. When she describes those reactions to you, especially during a charged conversation, she may be translating what's happening in real time without saying, "You're doing this to me." Listen for the shift from general statement to present tense implication. If she says, "I hate when someone makes me nervous like this," while still staying close, she's telling you the effect is already happening. 12. She asks whether you're good in bed without saying it directly. Have you noticed her asking questions that are obviously about sexual competence? She may ask if you're experienced, if you're selfish, if you pay attention, if you're the type to rush, or if women usually get attached to you. These questions are loaded because they're about performance, care, and reputation. She wants to know whether sexual intimacy with you would feel exciting or disappointing. This is where maturity matters. If you brag, you lose power. If you get defensive, you lose ease. A woman who's sexually interested often tests whether your confidence is quiet or performative. Real sexual confidence sounds calm. It doesn't need to prove itself. When she asks around the subject of being good in bed, she's trying to measure whether the fantasy of you has substance behind it. 13. She talks about contraception, testing, or safety. Does she bring up condoms, birth control, exclusivity, or sexual health in a surprisingly natural way? This is the sign I mentioned at the start. Many men misread it as cold, logistical, or unsexy. It's often the opposite. A woman usually doesn't discuss sexual safety with a man she can't imagine sexually at all. She brings it up because the idea has become real enough to need boundaries. That doesn't mean sex is guaranteed. It means she's moving from fantasy into practical assessment. Sexual health conversations are adult desire with the lights on. They show that she's thinking beyond flirtation and into consequences, comfort, and trust. If she can talk about protection with you and still keep the chemistry alive, she's not shutting the door. She's checking whether it's safe to open. 14. She tells you she'd be dangerous around you. Ever hear her say something like, "Don't tempt me. I'd get myself in trouble with you," or "I don't trust myself around you"? That's one of the most obviously sexual signals because she's naming her own restraint. She's saying desire is present and control is the thing being tested. The language matters because it positions you as the trigger and her self-control as the barrier. That's not general attraction. That's sexual tension becoming verbal. If she says it lightly but doesn't leave the interaction, she's often inviting you to hold the tension with her. The right response respects the boundary while acknowledging the charge. Something calm like, "I like that you said that," keeps the heat without pushing. Sexual interest becomes strongest when both people can admit desire without making it unsafe. 15. She makes consent sound sexy. What does it mean when she says, "You'd have to ask nicely," or "I'd want you to be sure I wanted it"? It means desire and permission are now in the same sentence. That's the clearest adult signal. She's not avoiding the sexual topic. She's shaping how it would happen. When consent becomes part of the flirtation, the fantasy has already moved from vague chemistry into something real, specific, and close.